concluding, I think, his first years. Nazareth was a little town situated in a fold of land broadly open at the summit of the group of mountains which closes on the north, the plain of Esdraelon. The population is now from 3 to 4,000, and it cannot have varied much. It is quite cold in the winter, and the climate is very healthy. The town, like all the Jewish villages of the time, was a mass of dwellings built without pretensions to style, and must have presented that poor and uninteresting appearance which is offered by villages in Semitic countries. The houses, from all that appears, did not differ much from those cubes of stone without interior or exterior elegance which now cover the richest portion of Lebanon, and which, in the midst of vines and fig trees, are nevertheless very pleasant. The environs, moreover, are charming, and no place in the world was so well adapted to dreams of absolute happiness. Even in our days, Nazareth is a delightful sojourn, the only place, perhaps, in Palestine where the soul feels a little relieved of the burden which weighs upon it. The midst of this unequaled desolation, the people are friendly and good-natured. The gardens are fresh and green. Antonius Martyr, at the end of the 6th century, draws an enchanting picture of the fertility of the environs, which he compares to paradise. Some valleys on the western side fully justify his description. The fountain about which the life and gaiety of the little town centered has been destroyed. Its broken channels now give but a turbid water. But the beauty of the women who gather there at night, this beauty which was already remarked in the 6th century, and in which was seen the gift of the Virgin Mary, has been surprisingly well preserved. It is the Syrian type, in all its languishing grace. There is no doubt that Mary was there nearly every day and took her place, with her urn upon her shoulder, in the same line with her unremembered countrywomen. Antonius Martyr remarks that the Jewish women elsewhere, disdainful to Christians, are here full of affability. Even at this day, religious animosities are less intense at Nazareth than elsewhere. Probably the tumble here. But health and both care from what one consumes and what one does to one's skin is attractive, whatever race or tribe one is, right? The horizon of the town is limited, but if we ascend a little to the plateau, swept by a perpetual breeze which commands the highest houses, the prospect is splendid. To the west are unfolded the beautiful lines of Carmel, terminating in an abrupt point which seems to plunge into the sea. The stretch away the double summit which looks down upon Megiddo, the mountains of the country of Shechem, with their holy places of the patriarchal age, the mountains of Gilboa, the picturesque little group with which are associated the graceful and terrible memories of Solam and Endor, and Thabor, with its finely rounded form, which antiquity compared to a breast. People always comparing mountains and stuff to all sorts of things. I've been to a place where they compared some rock on a mountain to Joseph Smith. Through depression between the mountains of Salam and Thabor are seen the valley of the Jordan and the high plains of Para'ah, which form a continuous line in the east. To the north, the mountains of Safed, sloping towards the sea, hide St. John de Acre, but disclose the Gulf of Caifa. Such was the horizon of Jesus. This enchanted circle, the cradle of the kingdom of God, represented the world to him for years. His life even went little beyond the limits familiar to his childhood, for beyond to the north you almost see upon the slope of Hermon, Caesarea Philippi, his most advanced point, into the world. And to the south you feel, behind these are the less cheerful mountains of Samaria, sad Judea, withered as by a burning blast of abstraction and of death. Now, Goyim is the plural of Guya, and Guya is the person who's turned their back on God. It's not that they were born of a different tribe or some other stuff, or they have a different label. You can call yourself a Jew all you want, but if you are following the rabbis instead of God, well, doesn't the term apply to you? And wasn't that what the prophets were complaining about? Is both the conservatives that, followed secondhand opinions rather than, is it supported or not, right? And the liberals who, set that stuff aside for their own wants, or whether or not they were bowing to what they thought was popular or whatever the deal was. Like I've mentioned how that watching that one rabbi, and he was talking about how, these are very serious sins according to Torah, but we don't believe that here. We'd rather, it's more important to be nice than to condemn their sin. It's like, basically was his message, and it's like, are you kidding me? No. Now, if they're still safe for the community, sure, let them in the community, but don't. Anyways, Joseph and Mary were accustomed to go up annually to Jerusalem to attend the Passover Festival. When Jesus reached this age of 12, he was carried to the temple to be initiated into the regular study of the law and to begin the observance of the festivals and fasts of the Jewish church. Now, church is the wrong word. Of course, they're trying to lean you towards Judaism was somehow a prediction of Christianity rather than a condemnation of its main points. Because Kirk means hero shrine. But there were Jews who worshipped angels and saints and that sort of stuff. But the Jews believed the age of 12 to be the line dividing childhood from youth. Much in the way in the Islamic world, 13 and 15 were narrated as the ages where they asked, have they hit puberty? And are they of sound mind? And then, then you become accepted as an adult and able to make one's property decisions as far as inheritance and that sort of stuff. But the idea that puberty wasn't required is just to make sense. But all those churches that say it's 7 or 8 or, that's even worse. At that period, one was called son of the law and first incurred legal responsibility. Josephus states that when he was 14 years of age, the priests of the city met with him, put questions to him about the law. Okay, so when he hit puberty, obviously they had to test him. This incident is the only passage in the early life of Jesus of which we have any reliable historical account, but it is full of interest. But going here, we have this idea. Not only are you of the age of accountability, you have to prove that you're using your accountability towards, what you should be in the community. And I was definitely of a church that was like that too. That they wanted to train you to be a missionary and be a good church member and all that. He was a remarkable child, born under remarkable circumstances, which had undoubtedly been narrated to him, and which he had pondered as he read the law and the prophets, or heard them read. So, Torah, Nebiim, and of course, Ketubim, the writings. He had never been in the temple since he was an infant. Now the sight of the solemn fane and the holy rites, amid the excitement of the great crowds who were present, must have stirred the depths of this profound young soul. A solemn sense of his spiritual capabilities, and perhaps an awful presentiment of his tremendous destiny, must have come upon him. He began to be revealed to himself. He did not put himself forward as a teacher among those white-haired rabbis. His hour had not yet come, but he was neither a stupid nor frivolous boy. His rare, fine spirit had been developing itself amid the quiet scenes of nature, and had been looking into the faces of the most profound and puzzling questions. Many a bright day from the heights near Nazareth, he had gazed upon the grand scenery about him, turning over what he had heard of the historic associations of such famous places as were in sight, feeling his blood tinge with the touches of autumnal breezes, or glowing in the rich warmth of the first spring in life and man. The seen and the unseen, nature and supernature, held their problems up to his soul, and he dared to study them. At 12, he was ready to ask questions, even of rabbis. The custom of the Jewish schools were for the scholars to ask questions of the teachers, and much of rabbinical literature consists of answers to such interrogatories. Most people would say interrogations, but maybe that was the common way in the 1800s. The questions a man might ask are as indicative of his character as the positive sayings that go out of his mouth. If history had preserved these questions which he asked in the temple, we should be helped in our study of Jesus. It records simply the general fact that his learned hearers were astonished at his understanding. When the Paschal ceremonies were ended, Joseph and Mary started to return to Nazareth. They did not at first perceive that Jesus was not of the company. They had been so accustomed to his obedience as to rely upon his promptness. Eastern travelers in ancient times ordinarily made a short journey on the first day. Perhaps Joseph and Mary did not start until some time in the afternoon, and then in company with many others. When they pitched their tents that night, they discovered his absence. They returned to Jerusalem. Luke says that after 3 days they found him, missed by Joseph and Mary. This probably includes their first day out, the second day in which they turned and inquired, and the third day when they found him. He was in the temple among the rabbis, astounding them by asking questions, startling by reason of their artless depth and amazing significance. To answer children is indeed an examen rigororum, says Haman, and again, who will stop the mouths of scribes and sophists must know how to put questions. Edition of Roth, 2, page 424. Mary, not Joseph, spoke to him. She and Joseph knew their relations.